Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Your Football Opinion. I am your host, Theo Ash, and week 2 is officially underway. Thursday Night Football was officially back last night. I know we had Thursday Night Football the week before in the opener, but that wasn't Amazon Prime. That wasn't Kirk Herbstreit and Al Michaels. That was actually a pretty competitive game that went down to the wire instead of what I'm used to from football I watch on Thursday night, where it's sloppy, a blowout, and there's a major injury that derails everything, unfortunately. I mean, we got to talk about it. The Dolphins, it was a disaster game. You get these sometimes. Games that will go down in your franchise's history as truly one of the worst of all time. Like, as big of a setback as you can have is what we witnessed from the Dolphins last night. Last week, Mike McDaniel said, this is a game we don't win the previous 2 years. He was talking about their 14-point comeback against the Jaguars, ended up winning it on a last-second field goal. They were tough. The Jaguars defense was playing them well, playing man coverage, kind of locking people up. They didn't turn the ball over, though. They got a big takeaway. They persevered. They scored. So it was a good, tough win from them, but my point after the game and after McDaniel said that was, look, it was a good win. It was a win that doesn't happen all the time, a 14-point comeback. You don't see it every year, although you have seen it with the Dolphins before. So that's not really a game that I don't expect the Dolphins to win. Like versus the Jaguars in September, I'm sorry. I understand how it happened and how that was impressive for a coach, but that is a game you win most of the time, even in previous years. This is a game you don't win if you're the Dolphins in the past 2 years. A game at night versus the Bills. They've lost 4 straight versus Buffalo. They've looked terrible. This is the benchmark game where everyone is able to see where the Dolphins are at. The Jaguars game doesn't show that. They win close, good, cool. Tyreek, Waddle, Tua, they look fine. A-Chain, like, at least the receiving game looked fine. We all knew this. Defense caused some problems. We all knew this, but did that say anything about the quality of this Dolphins team compared to previous? No. The Bills game gives us that. And now we see that Mike McDaniel and Tua have really no answers for beating this team or beating any good team. Let's take a look at some of these primetime numbers for the Dolphins since McDaniel entered the building. 7 p.m. Eastern time or later. These are usually big matchups against good teams. The Dolphins' third down conversion percentage is 34.3%. So they're converting about a third of the time. The best primetime team, the Buffalo Bills, in this regard, converts 52% of the time. After the Bills, it's the Chiefs, 49%. After the Chiefs, it's the 49ers, the Eagles, the Cowboys, the Ravens, the Chargers. The Dolphins are just as good of an offense as those teams, or at least they're supposed to be. But their third down conversion rate, when it's a big game, is really abysmal. They're down around names like the Tennessee Titans, the New York Giants, the Arizona Cardinals. That's who they're sandwiched between over these past 3 years now. In the red zone, their touchdown rate is 39.1% in prime time. Number 1 is the Cincinnati Bengals over the last few seasons, 76.5%. Where are the Bills here? The Bills aren't even that. Well, yeah, they are high. Never mind. They're at 69%. Miami, 39.1. That's just ahead of the Giants. That's just ahead of the Jets. That's just ahead of the Broncos, Colts, and Panthers. Those are the only teams below them when they get to the red zone in terms of scoring touchdown in these primetime games. And the sample size is a little bit lower with, like, the Panthers playing a primetime game. They've played 3. The Dolphins have played 9. So the Dolphins have played as many primetime games pretty much as anybody. This is not a small sample size game fluke here. They've played 9 over McDaniel's tenure there. That's pretty good. That's as many as, like, the Steelers. They play a lot of primetime games. That's as many as the Ravens. The Bills have played the most with 13, by the way. The Falcons have played the least with one. So Tua is just, I think, and this offense is just bad under pressure in the physical sense, like physically under pressure, like there's a defensive lineman coming at you, and also just in pressure situations. All right. Third down, people can pin their ears back in a big game. In the red zone in a big game, the windows are tighter. You don't get as much free space to play with. And they just can't do anything. They just can't do anything. I put the diamond tester to this Dolphins offense. It's fake. It's so fake. You need to be able to do things when the going gets tough. And in these big games, they have not been able to hold the ball and create anything in a big moment. And Tua has such a bad interception problem as well in these big games. I feel like it's a given. It's a 100% chance that when I turn on the Dolphins, I am going to see an underthrown deep ball or an inaccurate deep ball that gets intercepted any given game. And I'm also going to see another kind of pick, the one where there is a forced read over the middle of the field and it ends up being double or triple covered, and Tua throws a pick in that way as well. Just predetermining things, not really reading the. And I would say we were kind of 2 for 2 on that tonight, and you can bank on it. You can absolutely bank on it, and you can bank on when the defensive line gets home. Like, sure, it doesn't happen as much to the Dolphins as it does with other teams because they do get the ball out fast. But every time you do get home, you are creating a successful play for your defense. There is no, oh, damn, Tua stiff armed my free hitter and escaped out the back door and faded away and threw a touchdown. Like, there's a lot of quarterbacks that happens all the time. Even Brock Purdy, that happens like kind of a decent amount. The guy that Tua is kind of always being compared to, playing with a super team, playing in these huge games for a contender, as kind of a systemy guy. Like, Brock offers you so much more. I don't know. Every team that I listed when I went through the third down conversion rankings has a quarterback that it wouldn't surprise me to see them make somebody miss in the backfield. Tua just doesn't have that. In this game, he was trying to make something happen in the form of a throwaway. Right? He's under pressure. He's just trying to get the ball out of bounds and avoid an intentional grounding. He cannot even do that. And that's not the first time I've seen him really struggle to get the ball out of bounds on a throwaway. His arm strength is just terrible. It's terrible. And if you have a quarterback that's that unathletic, you're just a sitting duck. The speed completely saves this offense. Like, Tua has the superpower, right? Ryan Fitzpatrick mentioned it at halftime. What is his superpower? It's anticipation, it's timing. He can get the ball out so fast that he avoids hits, he avoids pressure. And that only works when you have the fastest receiver duo in the league getting to their spots on time. But how much is that anticipation really a superpower? All right, like, this is always kind of what I've thought, but just because you're getting the ball out fast and throwing before things break, it's admirable. There are times when it is absolutely necessary and you need to be able to do it. And if you're never doing it, it is a problem. But if you're always doing it, I wouldn't necessarily say that's a superpower to the extent that, like, Josh Allen has a superpower, which is just that he can dunk on anyone, anytime, anywhere. That's a real superpower. Throwing the ball before the receivers are ready for it, it can work. Sometimes it makes things unguardable, but there's also situations like last night where he throws the ball, Dubose turns around, and it's just right there. And I almost think that's like, it was a good throw, it was a well placed throw. But at the same time, I'm thinking from thinking as a human, from the wide receiver's perspective, you're running your route, you're turning around, there's a ball all of a sudden right on you, like hitting you right in the face. Human reaction time is only so fast. Like, is that a good thing? And if you're getting rid of the ball that fast in this system, like, it's all just about trust. I trust that things are going to open up. I trust that my wide receiver is going to be there at the hashes at this time. That's not like a real read to me. And the defenses have been able to take advantage of it because they know where the ball is going to go, and good ones have been able to just get to the spots that Tua likes to throw to and just shut the offense down. We've seen it many times now. We've seen it many, many times. So when they paid him, I think it's you just paid like Derek Carr tier guy. Carr, like very much not a playmaker, very much someone whose footwork I think even to this day is pretty rough. Someone who has the prerequisite arm talent. Like he's got some things to like, he's got some success, he's got some things, but it's never translated to anything super tangible. And eventually, a coaching staff got their hands on Carr and they just couldn't do anything with him and they cut him. And I think this Mike McDaniel scheme is getting okay play out of Tua Tagovailoa over the course of the last 2 years. Okay play. But if a different coaching staff came in, I think that it would be who's the backup because this guy can't do everything that we want him to do. He can do everything maybe Mike McDaniel wants him to do. He can do everything in a certain specific situation when everything is right. But this guy, over the course of his huge contract, like it's going to look bad at points. And this is without the injury stuff. And I don't know how to approach this because Tua on the field, we got to talk about it. I think there is a chance that he just goes through concussion protocol. He wants to finish out the season. When he's cleared, he'll want to come back and play. That is my prediction on how this will go. I think. And at the moment, I'm breaking down his playing style and playing strengths and weaknesses. Like we will see him again in an NFL uniform, and and the contract will be played out. But that might not even happen at this point. He scrambled. He lowered the shoulder. He hit the ground. He came up with the seizures, the curling of his fingers. Again, it's every concussion you have, the next one is worse. It gets worse and worse and worse and worse. And after the 2021 season, I was super concerned about having him out there as your starting quarterback at all anymore. 3 in 1 year, he seriously contemplated retirement. He got carted off like he was unconscious. It was scary, scary stuff. And knowing that every single time that happens, your risk for the next one gets higher and higher. It was a terrifying prospect to me going into the 2022 season, what this could look like. What kind of hit could he? It's a long physical season. I don't want to see him carted off anymore. I don't want to see something worse than what I saw in 2021. But last year, everything was running pretty smoothly. Like he was getting the ball out at a rate I haven't seen. I've seen it one time, and that was when Tom Brady was at his final years and just knew where he was going to go with the ball before the snap every single time and just got it there instantly. Tua and Tom were getting the ball out at unprecedented levels, and it really did a great job limiting the amount of hits that they both took. So nothing happened to Tua last year, and then this season it's like, okay, maybe he can sustain it, but no. Eventually, you're going to have to scramble. You're going to have to you're going to have to put your head down and fall forward for a big first down or something like that. I mean, that can just never be a part of Tua's game. I mean, even trying to create, I feel like he should just go down at this point if he's feeling pressure because another one, I don't even want to think. Like I don't know if this is a good idea or not or what, but I was telling my girlfriend who doesn't really pay that close of attention to football about Tua, and she knows the history. I was like, "Yeah, man, he got another concussion," and she said, "Could the NFL force him to retire?" And I thought that was an interesting question. Like the optics would be so bad, and not even the optics. Like I'm mad at myself for even saying that. Oh, the optics would be bad if Tua got a concussion. It would just be horrible. The optics, fuck the optics. Like it would just be horrible if he got a concussion. Like yeah, the optics would be bad. He would be. I mean, he could never be the same. I mean, who knows if he took like a. I maybe this is messed up to say, but like I didn't even think his hit with Hamlin was that crazy violent. You know what I mean? Like he was diving for the first. I've seen this happen with other quarterbacks a million times and they get up fine, I feel like. But with him, just any kind of physical play just feels like such a high risk to come up like that. I mean, he hit his head pretty good, definitely right on Hamlin's chin, which was so unfortunate, and then the ground. So I don't want to say it wasn't a hard hit, but going into 2023, it was all this talk about, oh, Tua has learned how to protect himself, how to brace his neck, how to make it so he can survive these hits. Like that hit didn't. I've seen that hit be less violent, I feel like, but with him, I for some extent, I feel like he's just not that used to scrambling. Plus, the head injuries history just makes it super awkward for him to make anything happen with his legs like that. I don't know. I don't know, man. I think he'll try to come back. I think that it doesn't matter if he does. Like, what is he coming back for? I think that this roster and this philosophy and this scheme, I'm so out. Like, I just think it's fatally flawed. I think it's fatally flawed. If he comes back and tries to execute this and go after a Super Bowl, it's not going to work. I just don't think he can win one. So I hope he does what's best for himself. I personally will not be super comfortable watching him going forward. Like I don't want to do that. It doesn't sound like a good time to me. So he can do what he wants. I don't think the NFL can force him to do anything. But I mean, if I was the NFL, I know what I would want him to do. I think it would be kind of selfish for him to take the field. I don't know. I don't know. I shouldn't get too much into the morality of his decision, but he can do what he wants, I guess. I just would feel uncomfortable watching him go through another 10 years in the NFL. You know what I mean? It's not just for the rest of the season. It's for the rest. He's not a very old quarterback. He could play until he's 40. There's going to be more hits like this, you know? So I don't want to spend too much time on it, I guess. Just rough, just brutal, just a complete disaster for the Miami Dolphins from beginning to end. Their defense, I thought, going to that side of the ball, like it looked pretty good. I thought, you know, they kept the game close in the first half, even though the Bills got a ton of opportunities. It started in great field position. You know, they were forcing fourth downs. They were getting the ball back a little bit. So the fact that they had a chance to make this a real close game at halftime and then just punted on the drive, what was that about? Excuse me. What was that final drive about? Weird clock management, just a weird game from McDaniel as well. But yeah, I think that the Dolphins defense did enough to slow the Bills down if the offense was doing anything. It just wasn't. And then the Bills are good this year. I mean, I'm pretty impressed with what they've put on film these last 2 weeks. That too high nickel defense, man, I like what they're doing. It's so obvious when they line up that the right thing to do is to run the ball. And 2 weeks in a row now, offensive coaches have tried to do just that. Drew Petzing and the Cardinals, they came out, I've said this a million times talking about Marvin Harrison Jr. They came out without a wide receiver on the field on first down. 3 tight ends, 2 running backs. There was 2 high safeties, nickel defense for the Bills. It doesn't matter what you run. They're going to do that, and you're going to have to run, while they pass with Josh Allen ripping off big plays at the highest rate in the league, you know, as he does. And it's just a good formula, man. There's nothing else to it. It's just a good formula. Their front 4 is kicking ass. Daquan Jones and Ed Oliver are sick. Von Miller looks a little bit back, no doubt. And I don't know what Sean McDermott does, but it just feels like they have so many linebackers that they can just spawn in and it doesn't affect anything about the defense. They're down Milano and they're and 43 left with an injury. like, how can you take advantage of that? Like, oh, let's run the football even more. And nothing really has squirted through so far. They've done a pretty good job. I mean, Connor had some nice runs, no doubt, but overall, your offense has to be very good, or your run defense has to be very bad for the running game to hold a candle to what Josh Allen and the Bills' offense is able to do. And they're such a good passing team. Like, we saw them erase Marv. Now, everybody was panicking about that. I said, look, the Bills have a good defensive structure to take away your top guy, and look what they just did to Tyreek Hill. Look what they just did to Waddle. Um, it is pretty good. It is pretty good that they can just keep a roof on everything and be successful at it, while also being able to stop the run at a high rate from these looks. Maybe not the high rate. Like, I'm sure their run defense at the end of the year won't look great because of how they play everything, but given what they're giving up, staying in that look all the time, their run defense is pretty good. All right, if their passing defense is going to be this good. Benford, he's been playing great. I think that Damar Hamlin, like, I know he's kind of a meme at this point on Twitter, and just kind of he'll associated with the injury, right? But I think he's been playing pretty good football over these last 2 weeks, actually, which is kind of a funny just story, right? People think of him as just this gimmick, this political thing almost. Like, he is a football player, and he has been playing pretty well. So yeah, I think the Bills have a really good formula now. Will they beat the Chiefs at Arrowhead in December? I don't know, but I mean, the Jets look pretty fatally flawed. The Dolphins look pretty fatally flawed. I'm willing to chalk up my L predicting the Bills record. The secondary, the new safety duo being replaced, the linebackers being injured. Sean McDermott just knows how to coach these guys, I guess. And Joe Brady, I think he's done a nice job. The run game has looked really good over the past 2 weeks. All kinds of stuff, gap scheme, zone scheme. They can bring Ray Davis in and run straight downhill on you. James Cook is extremely elusive. He can catch the ball in the backfield. That's kind of your new Diggs, I feel like, James Cook. People are like, who's the 1A receiver? Who's the 1A this and that in the Bills offense? It's James Cook. Like, he is the guy. He's not really in that big of a committee. They're leaning on him early. They're leaning on him often in a good run game. That's kind of your guy. That there's Josh Allen, who's your 1A, and then there's your second guy, and that's now Cook. And when you drop back to pass, then everything is a little bit more up in the air in terms of who gets the ball. But I don't think that's a bad thing, because everybody has looked good. Shakir has looked good. Curtis Samuel has looked good. Keon Coleman has looked good. He made a fantastic catch up the sideline week 1. Like, really beautiful stuff with someone trying to crowd him out of bounds. He's physical. He doesn't let it happen. Makes a play there. Like, Dalton Kincaid hasn't done much. I'm not that concerned, because the offense has just been clipping along at its normal rate. Some weeks it's going to be his week, some weeks it's not. All right. It's like the Packers. Who was their wide receiver 1 last year? And everybody kind of finished all about the same. You never know whose week it was going to be. It got them to the playoffs. It won them a playoff game. Jordan Love was able to play some really good football in that kind of environment. Josh Allen's going to be able to play some really good football in that kind of environment. And it was already kind of happening last year. Diggs, he was just another member of this group. He wasn't the 1A guy. And they rattled off a huge stretch of wins to end last season, and they're picking up right where they left off without Diggs. Just like I mean, the offense wasn't the receiving core. I wasn't thinking Diggs was going to make or break it. The run game and the defense being this good and Von Miller looking this good is what surprises me about them and what makes me optimistic about them going forward. So good for the Bills. I don't know where the Dolphins go forward from here. They just signed McDaniel and Tua to these huge extensions, and the two of them together, I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't think they'll win anything together. So that's my reaction to the Thursday night game. A lot happened. We're 24 minutes into this thing, so far past time for me to go to a new team. I'm sorry. I want to talk a little bit about something more positive now. A team that doesn't have very high expectations. Everybody's projecting them to finish last in their division. But After watching week 1, I think that they have a serious chance to make the playoffs or finish higher in this division than people thought. I'm talking about the Minnesota Vikings. Talking about the Minnesota Vikings. And maybe this is just a big Theo gets fooled week because I liked what I saw out of the New Orleans Saints and thought not only they're playing the Panthers, right? I get it. But with the Saints, I'm legitimately impressed by the offensive line and the scheme, right? I can't help it. Maybe my takeaway should be just Panthers doesn't count. And maybe with the Vikings, my takeaway should be Giants doesn't count. But I just can't help but be impressed. I just can't help but be impressed with what Brian Flores is doing right now. The offense, I think look, Kevin O'Connell with Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison is enough for Darnold. Okay, starting with that. Jefferson is sick. Addison I had my jaw on the floor with some of the routes that he was running. They hit him with 2 outbreakers, like deep outs in a row, holding that corner inside with a move and then breaking out, not allowing himself to get undercut at all. That's going to be there all year for everybody. And same thing with in breakers, right? You got good enough route runners that they can freeze these corners, create separation. The play action freezes the linebackers. It's a whole formula, right? It works for a lot of teams. There's going to be wide open space for Darnold to throw into. He was doing a very nice job throwing under pressure, I thought, in the first game. His problem has always been taking too much contact, taking too many sacks, maybe holding onto the ball a bit too long. I thought there was maybe a little bit of that in this Giants game, but the nice thing was when someone was crashing right into him or when someone was delivering interior pressure right, he was able to hang in there and make the throw anyway accurately. So you've got these open spaces. You've got the guy who can stand in there, trust it to open up, throw it accurately. The offense, the Giants defense isn't crazy, but Dexter Lawrence had a truly crazy game. Like that was a situation that was actually crazy. So to get it done and to look good in that circumstance makes me think like, okay, they can look good in other circumstances as well. And then the defense is really what I want to talk about. I love what Flores is doing. I thought he would never get a head coaching job again because of the way he kind of sued the league for being racist. And I thought maybe they might blackball him for the industry for that. He might work his way. He might work his way back. I never thought I'd see someone work their way back from being blackballed for standing up for something like good in the NFL. But he might be able to do it because that guy is absolutely cooking right now. He has completely changed his philosophy. What he was doing in Miami feels archaic now. The cover zero man stuff. It just feels like he's never, ever going back, and you never should. He had good corners back then. He could just swamp you with that first wave, beat up on some bad teams, had one good season, had some really bad seasons in terms of results. Just kind of a dice roll, I feel like, that specific scheme. Either teams can beat it or they can't. And when they can't, you're going to look like the best defense in the league, and when they can, you're going to look like the worst. It was very up and down. This defense, I think, for him now, is going to be very sustainable and a very tough one for anybody to crack because it's totally unpredictable. He is leaning into kind of the replacement pressure world. Their blitz rate was actually pretty low on week 1, even though the rate of, the crazy fronts, people mugged up, walked up, right, was high. He'll drop them back into spot drop, zone coverage. He'll design some crazy pressure path that really stresses the communication of your line. And everybody has eyes on the quarterback and is really good at reacting to what Daniel Jones was doing. Harrison Smith and Cam Bynum at the safety spot. I like that a lot. Just dropping back, eyes on the quarterback, reading his footwork, reading his progression, and just sinking to different spots. Spot drop has become kind of a dirty word. You want to match everything. You want to get a body on a body, not covering grass. I get it. But there is higher turnover potential when you are when you're getting eyes on the quarterback and keying in on that. And if you're good enough at it, you're good enough at it. And I feel like you could just see Daniel Jones going through his reads and just the defense that is reacting perfectly to everything. He'd look somewhere, everybody would close in. He'd look at the next thing, everyone would close. He'd look at the next thing, everyone would close in. He'd hit the top of his drop, things would instantly just start to tighten. And they're playing with these quarter structures, preventing anything from getting too deep on them. And then they've got 3 guys in the underneath area who can absolutely change the game. Josh Metellus. When Mina Kimes was on, I talked about how I thought Blake Cashman was a breakout candidate to make his first Pro Bowl in this season, in this scheme. I still like Cashman had a nice game. I think that he fits the scheme well. Like, he was good. I said the wrong Vikings guy though in that underneath layer. Metellus, number 44. He is the all-pro potential dude or Pro Bowl potential dude in that big nickel spot. What a performance from him. His zone instincts are unbelievably good. His pass breakup against spot drop zone, they just snuck neighbors in. He's just going to settle right in the hole, right? Like push a little vertical on the safety, settle down. You're in the triangle in the, I can't remember exactly what zone coverage it was. I think it was covered 2, something like that. But, you know, just think about a zone coverage. Think about everybody with eyes on the quarterback and just think about sitting down in an open space. It should be a pretty easy completion. But Metellus was locked in on Jones. He saw him drop back with his eyes at neighbors, started to get over there. Jones hit the top of his drop and immediately threw. Metellus was already getting a running head start on it because he was reading Jones's drop back. And then he fully laid out, dove, got a finger on it, broke it up in the zone cover. That's tough, man. You think that this is going to be a free completion versus the zone. And then they react that fast. It's tough. It's tough. And that guy can come down and hit you. He had some tackles for loss. Just really great coverage from him all day in the zones, and really everybody. You got Ivan Pace out there as well. Super athletic, coming downhill, will absolutely hit you. And he can kind of contort himself, I feel like, as he slips through gaps better than other players. Like, he just finds a way through just relentless energy and pursuit to break through, and he made a bunch of plays as well. Cashman was good. Everybody was good. Harrison Smith was good. He had a pick where he had eyes on Daniel Jones, right? He felt that inbreaker coming and was just standing there, right? He's old. He's 35 at this point. He doesn't need to have a ton of range. He just needs to stand there, see everything developing in front of him, and make a break. And he was right. And yeah, I think it's good. I think it's good. I think when Flores can do more with less in terms of his pass rush, right? I'm not sending 8 guys. I can send 4 and still be effective because I can overload one matchup. Like, we'll walk somebody up over the center. The center will have to slide that way, right? And then that guy drops out and we sneak a stunt right around or something like that. Or we overload the back with a lineman preoccupied. Now that he has kind of lived in that world and embraced that, instead of just swamping with 6 or 7 or 8 bodies, I think he can cook with this. I think this positionless, playing with the numbers style of defense is what's in now and going forward, and he's one of those guys who can do it. So, and he's got guys that fit the scheme. They're playing fast. You don't know what they're going to do, but they know what they're going to do. I know that the boundary corners have a lot of question marks. They were struck with tragedy this offseason in that room with Jackson being killed in the car accident and the ACL tear from Blackman, right? But I thought they did a good job as well. I think against the really high-end pass teams, like, maybe they don't have the edge rushers to get enough pressure, and eventually you'll just be able to throw it on top of all these zones, or, you know, stretch it down the sideline and really go at these corners. The Giants aren't quite able to do that. But there's a lot of teams that are flawed on the schedule. You're not getting the Buffalo Bills and the Kansas City Chiefs every week. I think that you better watch out. If you're Jordan Love, or if you're Jared Goff, or if you're Caleb Williams, I think that these guys can pick your pocket. I do. And I think the offense is good enough that if the defense is playing like this and the defense is a little bit Ravensy, I would say. Like the Ravens didn't have your one-on-one pass rush winners going into last year. Their boundary corner situation outside of Humphrey was a little bit unknown, but they were just so good in their pressure looks and in their zone coverages that they were a top tier defense, and they had a nickel like Kyle Hamilton who could just cause so much havoc that the Vikings have kind of a similar formula, even though Flores isn't from that tree. He's from the New England tree, and I think that New England and Baltimore has always kind of had a respect and a similar goal, and it doesn't surprise me that Flores is able to kind of take what's been working and change his philosophy and change his identity to do something that is more the meta right now, which was really popularized by Baltimore last year. So I think that they're flawed. I think Sam Darnold eventually will reach a ceiling. I think that this defense, because of the talent on the outside, can reach a ceiling. But you can if you can just hang around in the hunt and win some close games, and I think the Vikings are good enough to do that this year, like you can make the playoffs. And I think they look like that caliber of team where they're at least in the hunt because they're far. Week 1 is good for separating the mid teams from the really terrible ones. Maybe the Saints are not good, but mid, but they're better than being terrible. And that alone is good enough to get you a shot at things a lot of the time. So the Saints separated themselves. They're not awful. The Panthers are. And the Vikings separated themselves. They're not awful. The Giants are. And I don't even know if the Giants are like that crazy awful. Like going forward, are they going to get beat this bad every single week? Obviously, Jones kind of has the same thing that Tua has, where under pressure, he just doesn't have it. He's not that creative. He's not that coordinated. He's not that ambitious. Like, if you can get somebody in on Jones, the play is over. Every defensive coordinator knows that over the course of your schedule, there are quarterbacks who, when they feel the pressure, they drop their eyes. They panic a little bit. Jones is just one of those guys. As a defensive coordinator, you're excited when you see him on the schedule. So, yeah, it's not good in New York, but I thought their line looked like maybe a little bit better than it had in years past, like a little bit, maybe. Evan Neal wasn't out there. I think that helped out a little bit. Andrew Thomas had a really good game on Dallas Turner. Interior wasn't great, but it wasn't like Jones never had any time. I thought that the offense made sense. There are some offensive performances week 1 that just looked like a complete dumpster fire, just in terms of like what the quarterbacks were able to do, what the play calls were for them. Like the Bears, for example. Shane Waldron on the hot seat a little bit for me. Okay, so many screens, so many just plays where Caleb couldn't have done anything. With the Giants, it wasn't like Daboll was just not even calling anything for Jones. I thought they were doing a decent job trying to get zone beaters out there. It was just that the zone was too good, I thought. Like that play I described earlier with Metellus. Like that was a good play call. It was a fine read. Just like Metellus made a better play. And that's kind of what I felt like was going on the whole day. Like this could have maybe worked. Like they don't have some horrible play call on to beat this zone. It's just the zone coverage is too good. It's too good for these route combinations. It wasn't just screens all day. They were dropping back, and even when Jones had time, there really wasn't much there. The run game, they're missing Saquon. I wish they had that force multiplier to maybe draw some attention into the box for Neighbors so he wouldn't get bracketed all the time in the red zone, especially like having a running back that you could just hand the ball off to. He only needs to get a few yards. We saw how effective it was for the Eagles in week 1. Just Saquon between the 20s, like didn't do too much, didn't like break off too many explosive runs for the Eagles. But once they got in the red zone, it just feels so inevitable that he's got the burst and the power that you can't keep him from getting 5 yards and in New York, when they got to the red zone, it really did feel like you could prevent them from doing anything, handing the ball off. It wasn't that much of a threat, and you could double Neighbors in that spot. So the run game definitely concerns me. I wish they would have kept Saquon. You can have both. This is the thing that drove me crazy about all the dialogue about Saquon Barkley this offseason is like, oh, well, they saved some money. They're a rebuilding team. They don't need a running back. Like, that's all bullshit, man. Saquon Barkley is not expensive because he's a running back. This is the new, you want to moneyball it? How about you spend less money on talented players? And that is saying, okay, ignoring positional value, we can get somebody. What's his cap hit? Hold on. Let me look at these cap numbers that the Giants couldn't possibly afford. 2024, $3.8 million, 1.5% of the cap this year. Next year, $5.5 million, 2% of the cap. 2026, $9 million, 3.1% of the cap. Now, there are void years tacked on, I'm seeing. They're paying him a little bit for kind of a long time. That 2027 year when he's 30, there is a lot of void money that is going to him. But there are ways to work this contract that never get him like above 7% of your cap. Like, you could afford Saquon Barkley. This logic that we're not paying a $40 million quarterback to hand it off. Like, we're putting pressure on Daniel Jones. What? Why they that Hard Knocks drove me so crazy because on one hand they would be like, Jones doesn't have any help. How can we judge him? How can we possibly make the call that he's bad when he's out there with undrafted free agents and nobodies? And then in the same breath, they're like, well, we need to put the pressure on him by getting rid of his running back and proving that he can really throw. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? How does that make sense? I don't know. I don't know. Did they not see Christian McCaffrey go to the 49ers and everything got better there? Did they not see the Ravens invest in Derrick Henry and the Eagles with a highly paid quarterback invest in their own guy, Saquon Barkley? It was obvious where he was going to go. It's just stupid. Why did they do that? I do not know. Having a good running back helps your quarterback out as well. A little bit. It does. It does. In the red zone, in messing with the box numbers. It does. And they let him walk for nothing, and he went to a contender with a good offensive line, and now they are even more dangerous than they were before. That's in the division. It's just didn't make any sense to me. I just got sidetracked. I was talking about Daboll and how things didn't look that bad, or I don't know. I think here's my hot take, I guess. I think the Giants are going to beat the Commanders pretty badly this week. I'll say that. Like, there are true dumpster fires, I think, like the Commanders' defense. And then there's what the Giants got going on, which is Dexter Lawrence is a game breaker. I like Banks. Like, I like some of the players that they've got. I think when the Commanders and the Giants face off, we will learn who the true midder is. And I think the Giants are bad, but they're going to fall above the Commanders in terms of badness because I think that the Commanders' defense is truly just that terrible. And I think I'd rather have Daniel Jones at this point in his career than Jaden Daniels as making his second start, I think. I think being older is a little bit better. But at any rate, I'm impressed with the Vikings. And I think that this win over the Giants is more impressive than people realize. Is the very long way I've been trying to say this. I'm very excited to see 49ers Vikings. We're getting a real test right away if the Vikings defense actually can cause problems against a good offense. We will learn that immediately. I don't quite think that they'll win the game against the 49ers, but it wouldn't surprise me if they looked a little bit competitive considering what I just said. Same thing with the Saints, who I brought up before. Yeah, they beat the Panthers pretty badly, but it was just the Panthers. Now they're going into a game against the Cowboys. I don't think it was just a fluke. My prediction is we'll see that game get close. The Cowboys are big favorites. They just blew the doors off the Browns. They always seem to handle business against bad teams and perform against good teams. And I think the Saints seem like They're one of the bad teams that the Cowboys easily dispatch, but I don't know. The Saints run that Shanahan system. They run that wide zone pretty effectively and play action off of it. Cowboys front has had problems doing that in the past. That's one I think is on my kind of upset watch. Bengals Chiefs is a big one this week. It always is. Cincinnati needs to show me something. They need to show me something. Otherwise, they're going in Dolphins. This cannot be a Dolphins level week 2 performance. And I'm a little bit concerned that it could be. Dolphins Bills is supposed to be a marquee matchup, but the Dolphins just had too many flaws and they all just kind of came crashing down. Just because it was a division game with two good offenses doesn't mean it was up to the task. One team is flawed and one team is not, and that showed through in the scoreboard. I look at Bengals Chiefs. I'm a little bit worried it's going to be the same thing. Burrow always does that. These are two historically or in recent history. It has been very good offenses here. This has been a very good matchup every time that they've played in the past. The Bengals can totally still turn it around. It's a long season, but they just lost week 1. And it just doesn't feel like the time is right for them to beat the Chiefs. Their run defense is abysmal. And Burrow just doesn't seem to have it this year like he had in the past. Versus the Patriots, playing their zone coverage, I didn't see the layered throws, the pinpoint accuracy over somebody in front of somebody, right? I didn't see effective scrambling from him and throwing on the move downfield. I saw a very conservative, dink and dunk approach. I saw him flexing his wrist, looking uncomfortable. I saw the offensive line get completely dominated by Keon White. I just think it's a big ask for them now to roll into Arrowhead and have all these problems solved. And it comes down to Burrow. I don't want to be scared about your wrist. I don't want to be scared about your aggressiveness. Okay? We have got Jamar Chase here against a Chiefs secondary that he has dominated in the past. And there's no L'Jarius Sneed this time around. So throw him some go balls, get that boundary threat, that vertical threat back up and running. I haven't seen it in a long time. Hit one of those. That's what I'm looking for from the Bengals. Hit one of those. When they were special back in 2022, it was because they could air it out to these two. And I refuse to believe that just because teams have realized that too high shells are a good idea, that has to be gone forever. I understand that defenses are good now, that they've adjusted, that the league is a bunch of check down artists now, and there was only 33 touchdowns scored last Sunday, and I understand that it's different. The Bengals should still be better than everybody else at hitting deep shots down the sideline. All right, or if it's too high, up the middle, up the seams. I saw it happen one time against the Patriots. They were playing too high on everything. It took them until the fourth quarter to sneak Jamar Chase between the two safeties and get him involved that way when Jawan Bentley was trying to carry up the deep middle. So somehow, some way, they need to chase the ball down the field. I cannot if too high is really it for the Joe Burrow and he's just the league adjusted and now these goes are gone and it's like that cannot be true. That cannot be true, can it? We'll see. I need to see some verticality. And then the Chiefs just need to play like they usually do. The Chiefs, you know, they're the Chiefs. There's another big game, Bears versus Texans. I'm excited to see Caleb. I know that this one will probably be a blowout after the way the Bears looked week 1 and the way the Texans are. But I'm still excited to see it. Caleb Williams, CJ Stroud on my screen. Both offenses are very, very interesting. With the Bears, there's going to have to be some sort of adjustment made to protect the middle of the offensive line, which is tough because I feel like that's the hardest thing to actually do. Like, if your edge rusher is killing you, you can very easily chip him with a tight end or something. You can't allow a chip tight end behind your center, okay? So I don't know what adjustment is there. Maybe get Caleb out rolling, lots of play action, maybe. Just keep him away from that interior at all costs. But something needs to be done because what happened in week 1 was the worst interior offensive line performance that I think I've ever seen. Like it was a completely untenable offensive situation for Caleb dealing with this interior pressure constantly. Someone's got to play better. Tevin Jenkins, maybe it's not an adjustment. That makes more sense to me now that I'm explaining it. Tevin Jenkins has played better than that before. But these last 2 games against Kenny Clark, week 18, 2023, and now week 1, 2024, he looked like an absolute liability. So now you can't have 3 straight disaster games. Like, get back on track, dude. And move the pocket for Caleb. Get him on the run on purpose, not scrambling. 3 wide receivers in a flood out in front of him. Like, he can access any one of those throws from any angle. So maybe more boots, more sprint outs, more designed moved pockets for him. I'd like to see something like that. And then more shots down the sideline as well. You got I don't know if Roma Dunze will play in this game, but like last year, Roma Dunze was in college. He was an absolute beast down the sideline, right? Put him in the slot, have him fade down the field, take those shots to him. Just didn't really see a lot of verticality in this Bears offense, and I know the offensive line was part of the issue with that, but you can't be throwing screens all day. You were doing that last year with Fields. This has to look very different than the Fields offense, and last week it did not. And if there is a situation where you need to go score or you need to, put a drive together, put it in Caleb's hands. That's another thing I'm looking for the Bears. Last week, they were trying to put the Titans away. They went end around to DJ Moore, like more screens, runs. They didn't let Caleb drop back at the end of that game when it was important. Okay, that's not good. This was supposed to be good right out of the gate. This was supposed to be the best situation in rookie history, first round rookie history, first overall rookie history, that is. And week 1, it just looks exactly like it did with Fields. It's got to look different. I don't care if it's against the Texans and they're a good team. It can't. You didn't do all this to look the same as you did with Fields. So they have to figure something out. Otherwise, Waldron maybe on my fraud watch, I saw JSN's answer to what he did in Seattle. Didn't seem very impressed with it. Watched the Bears offense, the Seattle offense this offseason. They didn't do too much to help the offensive line out. They would spread out, get an empty. They had the widest formations in the league last year, Seattle. So, and what happened? They couldn't drop back because the offensive line got killed. That was my concern with the Bears. They were very spread out week 1. They wanted to get Caleb an empty, get him a lot of passing options, spread everybody out. Can the line hold up if you're doing that? No? Okay, so now you're throwing screens from empty, and it's ugly, right? So I got to see some real drop-back passing attack. If Waldron wants to do it so bad, if he wants to be in gun and throw the ball over the yard and kind of bring back maybe the 2010 style quarterback play when everybody was spread out. Like the widest formation in the league last year was 27 yards. That's Waldron. It used to be that would be one of the more condensed formations in the league. Not that long ago when Rodgers and Brady and Breeze roamed the league, everybody was that spread out. And it allowed them to read the defense, make decisions based on what they were seeing pre-snap. When everything is more condensed, the reads get muddier for the defense, but also the offense as well, because the defenses can disguise what they're doing. Everybody's just kind of huddled up, muddled up. The more you spread it out, the more things get kind of revealed. I think that's the way that's what Waldron kind of wants to play with, but you need an offensive line if you don't have these auxiliary players kind of in to create misdirection or to help out blocking or something like that. So we'll see. And then the Texans, I'm excited. I mean, I'm excited to see Joe Mixon again after what just happened. Slowick, this offseason, I talked a lot about the pressure he was under trying to make this all work. Diggs, Dell, Nico Collins in the receiver room. it's all great, right? They made that investment, but they ran it. They ran the ball a lot last year. So how are they going to get everybody involved? Well, the answer, they're still running it a lot, and these guys just aren't as involved as we thought. They got Joe Mixon too, and if he looks like a top back, it's okay. It's better to be running the ball with that than it is Singletary. Maybe that was the problem with Slowick's scheme last year. Maybe it wasn't, oh, he's running the ball too much. Maybe the problem was, oh, our running back isn't good enough, and that wasn't what I was expecting. I thought it was going to be let's air it out, and then Mixon is there um, to run the ball, to get less with more, or to get more with less from the running back room. Like we'll hand it off less, and we'll get more out of it because we have a better back. That's what I thought the formula was going to be. I guess what the formula actually is, we have a better back and we're running it more. And then when we throw it, it's going to be even more effective, I get. That's what it seems like. So the ratios of what gets called for the Texans and who is getting the ball and who they're really running through is, I think, one of the stories this season. It seems like they have like unlimited good options. So I think the Texans should be able to win this one, but against a Bears secondary that has a lot of good players as well, has a lot of talent. I'm excited to watch this one and then watch it back on the All 22 and figure out exactly, who the biggest stars are here, because I think we're going to learn who the most legit players in the league are, like Jalen Johnson versus Nico Collins, who wins that matchup. Kyler Gordon, Tank Dell, I don't know, Tyreek Stevenson, Stephon Diggs. It's a fair matchup kind of across the board there. And in the run game, even like you can hand it off to Mixon a million times, but also TJ Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds can put a stop to it. So I think that's just the Bears offense. I don't know if they'll figure it out week 2. But when the Texans are on the field, I think this becomes the Texans offense is on the field, this becomes an extremely interesting matchup. Oh, I'm losing my voice a little bit. My voice is starting to get sore. Just yapping for 57 minutes. I think that's a good time to wrap this episode up. I'll be breaking down more of the games on the Pro Football Network TikTok, and check them out on Twitter as well, at PFN365, Instagram, Facebook. I think they're on, although I'm not on Facebook. So are they posting me on there? I don't even know, to be honest with you. But if you're on Facebook, go find out for me. Follow them there. Follow my personal accounts at Theo NFL on Twitter and TikTok. Click the subscribe button, smash that like button, and get all the Your Football Opinion episodes delivered directly to you every week. You'll know when they drop if you haven't already. So yeah, that'll do it for this episode. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you after Sunday.